In the 21st century, there are still places whose inhabitants cannot go out on their slippers to ask their neighbors for bread, because the nearest neighbors are hundreds of miles away in a stormy ocean. These are the most remote inhabited islands in the world, places you have to think twice about getting to or leaving. Want to know them? Stay tuned. So my old sports, this is EdDevelop, where you will find the best scientific and similar curiosities. Subscribe, activate the notification bell to enrich your day every time we upload a new video, and consider our Patreon. Find the link below in the description. Now it is time for the fun part. At a time when it seems possible to travel from one end of the world to the other in a matter of hours, some communities still live in semi-isolation from the rest of the planet, whether because they are part of scientific or military bases on remote islands, or to defend their traditional way of life. Many people live on islands hundreds of miles away from any other permanently inhabited place. Others are connected to the rest of the world only by occasional ships. Here are some of the most isolated inhabited islands on the planet. Number 7. Tristan da Cunha, Reino Unido. Can you imagine living in a place that can only be entered with permission? Tristan da Cunha, a volcanic island belonging to the United Kingdom, is the most remote inhabited place on the planet, with barely 300 residents. It rises from the South Atlantic, 2,810 kilometers from Cape Town, South Africa, and 2,334 kilometers from the British island of St. Helena. The island's steep terrain makes it impossible to build an airport, so its only means of communication with the rest of the world are two fishing company ships, the MV Edinburgh and the MV Baltic. These vessels make the crossing from Cape Town every 2 months, and the journey takes about 6 days, weather permitting. Each ship can accommodate a maximum of 12 passengers. Even non-residents of the island must apply for permission to stay in the archipelago. However, many people are turned away each year, so if you're thinking of visiting, think twice. Hey, wait! Now's the time! Subscribe to the channel to be entertained while learning. It's free! Number 6. Kanton Island, Kiribati. For a government to forget part of its territory? It happens to these islands. On May 5, 2010, Alex Bond, a British ocean sailor, anchored his small sailboat, the Mary Powell, which he had used to cross from Hawaii to Australia off the coast of a lost atoll in the Pacific. He was astonished to see a group of natives emerge from the undergrowth and call for help. The 24 inhabitants of Kanton Island, one of the islands that make up the small country of Kiribati, had been forgotten by their government and had been without outside help for months. The 14 adults and 10 children left on the island were starving and hungry. Bond gave them food and organized a radio expedition with supplies. Kanton is the northernmost of the atolls in the Kiribati archipelago and is 1,760 kilometers from the republic's capital, the nearest inhabited place. The curious thing is that it has an airstrip of 1,900 meters built by the Americans during the Second World War, but it was abandoned in the 1970s. What do you think about this? It is a total lack of respect for these people. Number 5. North Sentinel Island, India. A population that lives in the past? Yes, it exists. This island in the Andaman Sea, east of the Bay of Bengal, Indian Ocean, is not inaccessible because of its remoteness. In fact, it is only a few miles from the larger Andaman Island. It is inaccessible for another, more singular reason. Its inhabitants are fierce aborigines who, to this day, have not allowed anyone to land on its shores. Any attempt to do so has ended in a hail of arrows and extreme cruelty. Nothing is known about them, neither their number, nor their ethnicity, nor their language or culture. They still live in the Paleolithic age. The island is 72 square kilometers, covered in jungle and surrounded by a reef that makes it impossible to approach the coast for 10 months of the year. An attempted landing by anthropologists filming a documentary in 1974 ended with the director wounded by an arrow and the group dispersed. There were other attempts in the 1990s, but they were equally unsuccessful. The inhabitants of these islands care little for a modern life. Don't you dare approach, old sports. This island is known to have witnessed a murder by its inhabitants, so avoid the bad times. Number 4. Kapingamarang, Federation of Micronesia. It takes 11 days of sailing in a small 45-foot sailboat to reach this remote Pacific atoll. Kapingamarang is a coral island with barely 1 square kilometer of habitable area, where 350 people live oblivious to the rest of the world. They are self-sufficient. They have drinking water, fish, coconuts, bananas, pigs, chickens, taro, pumpkins, etc. The only way to get to the island is to rent a boat or wait for the Micronesian government freighter that goes to Kapingamarang Kapingamarang 2 or 3 times a year to bring in food, fuel, and other supplies. The ship also brings back high school students who study in the state capital, Pompeii, 750 kilometers from Kapingamarang, so they can enjoy their vacations. Once a year, a luxury cruise ship comes by and its passengers go down to the atoll in boats, weather permitting. Isn't it fascinating? Number 3. Pitcairn British Overseas Territories. When Fletcher Christian and 11 other sailors mutinied on the HMS Bounty in 1789, they staged the most famous shipboard rebellion in history. They abandoned Captain Bligh and his crew on a barge and set out to find a lost island in the Pacific where no one could find them. That island turned out to be Pitcairn, an ancient volcano that rises in a corner of Polynesia. Because it is so remote, it is still an adventure to get to or from Pitcairn. There is no airport, and the only communication with the rest of the world is a freighter that arrives several times a year from Mangareva in the Gambier Islands, French Polynesia, or aboard some luxury cruise ships that pass through. Would you like to visit? Number 2. Isla de Hornos, Chile. Cape Horn, the southern end of the American continent, is not on the continent but on an island. A remote island surrounded by a raging sea where the world's wind factory seems to be located. It used to be a detachment of 3 Chilean military men who took care of the installations and gave sovereignty to this mythical point of world navigation. Now, the lighthouse and the weather station are run by a single military man who has to live on the island with his family for a year. Believe it or not, there are more than 500 applications for this position each year. Hornos Island can only be reached by private boat or on one of the 2 cruise ships that ply the Patagonian channels between Punta Arenas, Chile, and Ushuaia, Argentina. If you're the kind of person who likes to be alone, this job is perfect for you, old sport. Would you apply? Number 1. Tokelau Island, New Zealand. This archipelago is made up of 3 coral atolls that add up to less than 10 square kilometers of land and is home to nearly 1,500 people. But there is no airport or shipping line connecting them to New Zealand, the country they depend on. Their only link to the rest of the world is a freighter that arrives every few months. Yet they have managed to become the first territory in the world to get to 100% of its energy from renewable sources. The 4,032 photovoltaic panels and 1,344 batteries have done the trick. An island far from pollution and with renewable resources? To be admired. Let's not make too much fuss about it so that it remains a hidden place between you and me. Is it a deal? Would you like to visit one of these islands or even stay and live there? I don't blame you, I would too. Which one was your favorite? Tell me in the comments below. Thank you for making it to the end of this video. My old sport, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more content. See you next time.